Continuing now with the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, in Surah Al-An'am verses 80 to 83, it says, "And his people argued with him. He responded, 'Are you arguing with me about Allah, while He has guided me? I am not afraid of whatever idols you associate with Him. None can harm me unless my Lord wills. My Lord encompasses everything in His knowledge. Will you not be mindful? And how should I fear your associate gods, while you have no fear in associating others with Allah, a practice that Allah has never authorized? Which side has more right to security? Tell me if you really know. It is only those who are faithful and do not tarnish their faith with falsehood, those are guaranteed security and those are rightly guided.' This was the argument we gave Ibrahim against his people. We elevate in rank whoever we please. Surely your Lord is all-wise and all-knowing." Now, in the previous episode, we saw how Ibrahim alayhi salam was able to decipher the oneness of God by just reflecting and asking the right kind of questions. Not only did he understand Tawheed, but he would encourage others to reflect as well. Now, in these verses, Allah informs us about the response Ibrahim received from his people. And typical in every society, when people feel that their old ways are being challenged, they feel threatened. No one likes to be told that the things that they have been believing all their lives might be wrong because there's no logic to it. Naturally, people become defensive. So in the case of idol worshippers, since they could not logically answer Ibrahim's questions, they tried to instill fear in him by threatening him that the gods will curse him and punish him. To which Ibrahim alayhi salam informed them with courage and conviction that no one can harm him unless it is the will of Allah. And that is what we call tawakkul. For example, ask yourself, how many times have you been in a situation where people have scared you about the consequence of saying the right thing or doing the right thing? How many times have you been told to just quietly obey, close your eyes, ignore the injustice that you see happening, because if you try and do the right thing, those in power will harm you? And how many times have you actually not done the right thing because you feared others more than Allah? Why don't we tell ourselves at that time that no one can harm us if it is the will of Allah to protect us? And if we are harmed, then it was because Allah had willed it, He had destined it. Why don't we have this firm belief at that time that the God who allowed us to be harmed is also the same God who will help us to recover from the harm? In fact, through these verses, you can also see Ibrahim's conviction when he asks his nation why he should fear their handmade gods when they don't fear the one true God who is capable of doing anything and everything. There is no logic in fearing something handmade that can be dropped and broken in a second. But where is the logic in not fearing a God who has created the entire universe and every single creature, and not only did He make it, but He also controls it? Also, the fact that Ibrahim asks them why they are worshipping gods whom Allah has not given any authority implies that perhaps this nation was arguing that even though they do worship many idols, they also believe that there is one main God who is more powerful than all of the gods. So it's like a hierarchy where right at the top there is one main God, and below him there are many smaller gods, there are many idols who are assisting that one main God. The reason we can infer this is because this is why the nation is not denying Allah. So when Ibrahim alayhi salam talks about Allah, they're not denying Him. On the contrary, they're just believing that yes, there is one main God, but there are a lot of other idols who assist that one main God. And this, in fact, is a very common argument even made today by idol worshippers. They believe that there is one main God who has created everything, but at the same time, there are smaller gods or idols that also have to be worshipped. Perhaps those idols take your prayers up to the one main God. Perhaps those idols are there to assist God. Whatever the reason might be, they believe that worshipping the one main God and the idols at the same time is incredibly important. That is why in response you can see that Ibrahim alayhi salam is asking his nation why they are not fearing Allah, who has not given them any authority to worship these idols. In other words, they are claiming that these idols assist God or that these idols can take your prayers up to God. But where is the proof? When or where did God say this? So based on the way that Ibrahim a.s. is responding to his nation, we can infer that perhaps the nation did believe in that one main God, but at the same time they also believe that there are lots and lots of minor idols who also need to be worshipped. And so of course, regardless of their explanation, regardless of their justification, Ibrahim a.s. is asking them one main question. Where is the proof? Do they have a prophet who has claimed this? Do they have a book that has been given to them by God which mentions this? Where is the evidence that God Almighty has instructed them to worship all of these idols? Now, of course, from all of this, what you can understand is that Ibrahim a.s. keeps appealing to the intellect of his nation. He keeps providing excellent arguments to make people think. It's all about thinking, questioning, finding the logic in things. That's why Allah has given us an extremely intellectual and comprehensive brain. It is our greatest strength and it is Iblis's greatest weakness. Iblis works on deceiving us. But you cannot deceive a person who loves to gain knowledge, who is always doing research, reflecting, pondering, trying to find the truth, and who loves to gain wisdom. So ultimately, Allah ends by telling us that these were arguments that He gave Ibrahim alayhis salam. Therefore, the argument regarding the sun, moon, and stars not being God because they set, as explained in the previous episode, and the argument seen in this episode was guidance being given to Ibrahim by Allah. This is what Ibrahim a.s. means when he tells the nation that those who follow the truth and do not corrupt their faith by also following falsehood, so they don't mix truth with falsehood, they only follow the truth, they will be granted protection and they will be granted guidance. So if you only think about earning Allah's happiness, if you don't fear anything but Allah, then Allah will grant you wisdom. He will help you ponder and reflect. When you are trying to search for the truth and find the answers to your questions, Allah will help you find those answers. He will help to provide you with those intellectual statements and the logic that you need to argue with your enemies. And besides all of that wisdom, He will also help to further boost your iman. To be elevated in status, as Allah mentions in verse 83, does not mean that Allah will give you money and wealth. It means He will give you wisdom and honor. It means that people will start to have respect for you in their hearts, and Allah will teach you the truth about things so that you can share the knowledge with others. Being elevated in rank has nothing to do with materialistic benefits, because we know that all the prophets were elevated in status, but they were not rich. With the exception of Dawud al-Islam and Sulaiman al-Islam, most of the prophets were not rich at all. At the same time, we know that there were many kings who were incredibly rich. They had a lot of materialistic benefits, but in the eyes of Allah, they had no status. They were not elevated in rank at all. Therefore, from these verses, you can learn the same lesson that I mentioned in the previous episode. And that is that when you keep an open mind and a clean heart, and you are sincerely searching for the truth, Allah will definitely guide your heart towards the truth. And in that situation, regardless of the negative comments people might say to you, the toxic comments that might try to pull you down and discourage you, all you have to do is listen to your heart and trust your instincts, because that is where Allah's guidance will come, as can be seen again over here in the examples of Ibrahim alayhis salam. In fact, this again reinforces something that I mentioned in the first episode, which is the fact that a lot of Ibrahim alayhis salam's youth is discussed in the Quran in order to make us understand that even though he might not have been a prophet at this point, as long as you trust your instincts and you keep questioning and you learn to reflect and ponder, you will be able to understand the truth. Your heart will automatically be guided. And that is because Allah is the all-wise and the all-knowing. He knows which of His slaves is truly trying to connect with Him, truly trying to understand Him, and He knows exactly how to grant wisdom to that slave. All the slave has to do is make sure that he refrains from fearing anyone or anything other than Allah and seeks only validation from Allah. Assalamu alaikum.